Hi everybody, I'm Posture Ellie and I am a posture therapist. I'm sure lots of you who are watching this will know that already, but I felt like I hadn't done a bit of an intro video to all of this posture magic for quite a long time. So I wanted to expand a little bit on how I work with people, how I help people, and the kind of philosophy and the approach that I take with working with my clients. So first and foremost, like I said, I'm a posture therapist and I am trained as an affiliate in the Egoscue method. So Pete Egoscue is my leader. You know, I really love what he says, and thanks to his amazing thoughts and work, I have a job that I absolutely love, and I live in a body that is currently 35 years old, but I feel exactly the same as I did when I was 18, arguably much more mobile because I never exercised or did anything when I was younger. I only discovered movement when I was about 27, 28. So yeah, I have Pete Egoscue to thank for that. This is one of his books, but he has got about 6 or 7 others. If you want to get into this, just buy any of them that takes your fancy, give them a read, and hopefully they will pique your interest. So I'm an affiliate of the Egoscue method. So I trained in posture therapy in 2018. So I've been doing this now for like 6 years. And what posture therapy does is it teaches people how to move differently. In a nutshell, that's what we're doing. It's not about sweating. It's not about stretching. It's not about manual manipulation. I'm not like touching people with my hands. I mean, that would be amazing if I could, because I work completely online with people. It is about educating people how to move themselves differently. So when we talk about posture, you know, the first thing that people do is they shove their shoulders back and puff their chest up into the sky. And that's not what posture is. If you're consciously adjusting yourself to stand differently, you're not standing with good posture. You're standing in a kind of static, stiff, forced way. The more that we do things in like static, stiff, forced ways, the more static, stiff, and tense we become. So doing this is not improving your posture. That's actually making your posture worse because you're going to create more tension. We don't really have such thing as good posture and bad posture. What we have is mobile posture or stiff posture. So if you are stiff, if your ankles can't articulate properly, if your hips can't rotate in the socket, if your pelvis can't move kind of forwards and backwards like a cat flap, if your spine is immobile, if your shoulders are stiff because you're at the computer all day, or if your hands are super tight because you're like a T-Rex clawed on your phone all the time, this stiffness feeds into bad posture. Because if our joints can't perform what they are supposed to perform correctly, our body as a whole starts to break down. So the biomechanics of our body are entirely dependent on every single part of our body playing its part. Think of an orchestra. If you've only got the violins playing, it's not a very good orchestra. If you've only got the clarinets playing, it's not a very good orchestra. We need the double bass, we need the piano, we need the drums, we need everything to work together in order for the orchestra to be doing their job to the kind of optimal level. And your body's exactly the same. You know, lots of people are going to the gym and working their abdominals and working their glutes and working their biceps, but they're not thinking about the mobility and the function of their hands, or the mobility and the function of their feet, or the mobility and function of their breathing, super important, by the way, and all of these things. So we lose sight of how important every single part of our body is and how important every single muscle in our body is. Every single part of you is super important if you want to maintain a pain-free and mobile body. And so what I do is to teach people where they are stiff, where they are dysfunctional is what we call it. So if your body's not moving properly, I will sort of help you understand where you are dysfunctional, which parts of your body are not moving very well, which is different to the bits that hurt, by the way. and reading the books will help you with that. So I help people to identify the bits of them that are stiff, so the bits of them that are causing these like whole body biomechanical issues, which in layman's term reads as pain and tension. And then I help people to give them the exercises and the posture routines that they need to do in order to unlock this tension, restore function back to the joints in their body, and therefore release tension and reduce their pain. It really is that simple. What's really hard, I think, to get people understanding before they start doing posture is how posture is different to things like yoga and Pilates. So I think I get lots of people that potentially dismiss posture because on the surface they look at it and they think, oh, that looks like yoga, that looks like Pilates. I'm already doing those things. They don't help me that much. I've still got my back pain, so I'm not going to try posture because it's the same as yoga or Pilates or whatever. And what I will say is, firstly, I'm a massive fan of yoga and Pilates. I do them myself basically every day. I'll do one of those two. And I'm a trained yoga teacher as well. But it's really, really different. They sit very differently in my head. So yoga in principle is actually similar to posture in that it's a very like whole body movement focus with basically every movement in there that your body needs. But the problem with yoga is that people that do not have the kind of muscular function to do things well end up compensating when they do yoga poses, and actually they can strengthen their kind of compensation, their wonkiness and their imbalance. So however much I love yoga, the problem with yoga is that for many people, they're kind of jumping in at level 6 rather than jumping in at level 0, which is where they need to start. And often yoga teachers are perpetuating myths about movement that just simply aren't true. So there are lots of things and lots of cues that I hear in yoga classes that I don't know where they've come from. I don't know how they've developed, but it doesn't make any sense. And people doing those classes will often listen to those types of cues and absorb them as the truth because they're listening, but actually by being really fixated on some of the terribly instructed yoga cues, it actually creates more like pain and problems for people. So, and also to Pilates I would consider to be more of a strength thing rather than a mobility thing. So I think yoga is great for mobility and strength, but more mobility. And I think Pilates is great for strengthening like your abdominals, your glutes, your hamstrings, your triceps, your shoulders, things like that, but it's not quite so mobility focused. I love both of them, but posture has a different place in my mind. And my posture exercises, when I wake up in the morning, I do 10 minutes of meditation with my Calm app, and then I'll do like half an hour of posture exercises. My posture exercises set my body up so that when I then do my Pilates or my yoga, or I go for a run, or I go climbing, or I go for a walk, or whatever it is that I'm doing that day, I'm setting myself up for success because I've brought my body into balance and alignment first, before asking it to move more intensely. So yoga, will be more difficult when you look at it on the surface than posture. But then when you dig into it, it's actually more difficult because you're doing it more functionally. And it's about getting you rewiring how your body works and getting you thinking about things that you've never thought about before. So, you might do things like cat-cow, cats and dogs, in a yoga class, and you've done that for years and you think that you know everything about it. But then when I get you doing it, it's like, point your feet like this so you get cramp in the arches of your feet. That changes your pelvic position. When you've got more pelvic mobility, you'll be able to move your spine differently. And when you can move your spine differently, you're going to be able to get into your shoulders more. I will teach you things about yourself and about how your body moves more so than you can imagine before you start doing it. It really is very different, but it's really hard to describe until you have tried it yourself. It's much slower, much more mindful, and much more focused on doing things well, doing things with function, doing things with balance and alignment, versus doing acrobatic things that frankly most bodies do not have the capacity to do, which eventually leads them towards pain and injury. It might not be pain and injury the first time they do it, but it might be pain and injury when they've done their 500th, I can't say that, chaturanga poorly, for example. You know, with all of this stuff, the first time you do it, you're not necessarily going to get pain. But if you're doing it badly over and over again, the 50th time, the 100th time, that's when you might start experiencing the pain. So yeah, hopefully that doesn't confuse you more, and hopefully that gives you an idea. I help people move better, reduce pain, and improve their posture by teaching their body how to move in new ways. And by teaching our body how to move in new ways, we wake up more muscles in our body, and the more muscles in our body that can work properly and know what they should be doing, the better you will feel. It really is that simple. I help people of all ages, like literally I've worked with children before, I've worked with people in their 80s before, I've worked with people who run ultra marathons and maybe have like a little bit of a knee niggle and want to get rid of that knee niggle so they can run more ultra marathons, all the way to people who are completely bedbound in chronic pain. The spectrum of people, the spectrum of locations, the spectrum of conditions and ailments and symptoms, itises, osises, opathies that I have dealt with is expansive. But none of those things are actually that important. Like the age of the person isn't important, the condition of the person isn't important. The only thing that is really important is actually how much that person wants to help themselves. Success with posture isn't to do with me as a teacher. Obviously, I have a responsibility to help you as much as I can and to give you like the tools and resources that you need to like explore this yourself. It's not down to me. It's not down to your age, and it's not down to the diagnosis that your doctor gave you. It's down to how much internally you want to create change for yourself, because I understand it. Change is really hard. Success with posture firstly requires a great deal of commitment. You know, the way that I work with people nowadays is that I'm trying to encourage people that work with me to do half an hour of posture every day. If you can't do half an hour of posture every day, and you know, sometimes life does get in the way. I don't do posture every single day, but I do it like 98% of days probably. If you can't do it every single day, that's okay. But if you can't do it 3 times a week, you're probably not going to get the results that you want. You really do need to be kind of thinking about this as something that you do like at least 3-4 times a week, ideally every day. And I have people that are in so much pain and are in such a bad way, but they are so motivated to get themselves better that they end up doing their posture exercises like 2-3 times a day, because they're like, I have to do this. I have to make myself feel good. I have to get myself out of this rut. And those people are just so admirable to me. Like the people that I work with really inspire me, because they are, like I said, I see people who are in a terrible way to start with, but through their own dedication and hard work, they completely transform and revolutionize their lives. It's amazing. And it's, you know, it's an honor and a privilege to be part of that. But I don't take credit for their success, because I've worked with so many people now that some people succeed, many people succeed, but it's down to them. It's not down to me. The people that fail don't fail because of me. They fail because they've stopped doing the posture exercises, which is what their body needs. So I've kind of gone off on a little bit of a tangent there, but the kind of the gist of this is that don't be frightened to start posture just because you think you're too old, or just because you think you're too bad or too stiff or in too much pain or whatever it is. There's always a way out. You might not ever get 100% better, but I believe that most people can make at least 20% difference in how they feel, and actually to live in a body that feels 20% different to how you feel now, 20% better, that's hugely significant in day-to-day life. So, you know, this is about, it's not about all of those things that you're starting off with. I don't want you to be frightened about starting posture because of being scared that you're too old or too immobile and things like that. The question that you need to ask yourself before you start this work is, am I ready to make the changes to my life that I need to make myself feel the best that I possibly can be? That's what it boils down to. I've dealt with lots of people in the past where they're very enthusiastic to start with and they kind of rush out the gates, and they're doing their posture exercises every single day for like 2 weeks, and then they haven't experienced the changes that they want to have yet, which of course they haven't, because your body's been moving badly for possibly decades. The changes aren't going to happen immediately, straight away. It takes time. This is a long, long journey. And unfortunately, or fortunately, because you end up loving movement if you're like me, it's a long old journey and it never stops. Just like we need to eat food every day, just like we need to drink water every day, just like we need to sleep every day, our body needs movement every day. Our lifestyles are not giving us the variety of movement that we need. Even when we go to the gym, even when we do our yoga, we are still mainly, most of us, sat on a chair most of the time and have been most of our lives. We have to choose to move because our environment has taken that kind of choice away from us. Our environment no longer gives us the stimulation that the human body needs. So it is up to us as individuals to make the right choices for ourselves, to create time, to create an environment where we are prioritizing movement. Because if we're not prioritizing this type of corrective movement, we are going to get ourselves into more and more pain, and our quality of life is dramatically going to reduce. I wish I could get people understanding this when they're very young. I wish, and I know, like I'm 35, and if you'd said all this stuff to me when I was 20, 25, there's no way I would have listened to it. But I see people who are 25 who are ignoring the little glimmers of pain that are starting, because it's easy to ignore it in the beginning. You can pop a paracetamol, you can get more cushioned shoes to hide the problem, you can buy a back support or whatever it is. To start with, you can mask things and you can hide things. But those are the little knocks on the door of your body saying, please listen to me. You need to change something. Please listen to me. And if you keep ignoring it, the problems just spiral and get worse and worse and worse. So 10 years down the line, the knock on the door is much, much harder. And people still ignore it then. They're still popping the painkillers and doing these things that are like suppressing the problem and suppressing the symptom, but never getting to the root cause of the biomechanical issue. And then another 10 years later, the police are kicking down the door with their feet. And that person's like, 45, 55, and they're thinking, oh, I wish I had done this sooner. The sooner in your life you can get into doing this type of stuff, you will save yourself so much heartache, so much anxiety, so much money, so much time. People are like, oh, it's really hard to find time to do my posture exercises every day. It's really hard to find time to be in chronic, debilitating amounts of bad pain. I'm not saying this to be scary, but I am saying it to you to hopefully shine a light on this. If you are ignoring your pain now, your pain is going to make you make time for it in the future. There is only so many steroid shots and medical interventions and drugs that you can take to hide the problem before the problem has snowballed to the extent where it will consume your life. Please do something about this now. You will always thank yourself for it. And to finish up on this video, what I actually consider my job to be about is not really about diagnosing. I always say to people, I don't diagnose problems, so I don't tell you you've got Achilles tendonitis or whatever it is. Firstly, I don't have the qualifications to do that, but secondly, it's completely irrelevant. I don't diagnose problems. I give you solutions to get rid of the problems that you have. Let's not label things. It's not helpful. But my job isn't about diagnosing issues or giving people the right exercises to do or being this posture expert. My job is actually about trying to get people to reconnect with themselves. The older I get, the more spiritual, the more woo-woo I become, but arguably the wiser I also become too. And the more that I realized that so much of our just general issues in life, our depression, our anxiety, our comparison to other people, our competitiveness, like keeping up with the Joneses, that type of thing. I really believe that so much of that is down to this disconnect between body and brain. Humans are designed to live in their body, hunting, gathering, making fires, building shelters, living in communities, like being outside the whole time, being part of the nature that we are like intrinsically connected to. When we live this life, our brain is in that, because we are moving so much, our body and brain are just talking to each other all the time and communicating. When we're working physically and when we're absorbed in a task that's physical, time just flies by and it gives our brain that time to shut off. Because we are all sat still now, all of the time, for all of our lives, we're becoming really separated between our brain and our physical body. And that separation of our body is just sat there like a slug on a chair all day long from the moment that we're 4 years old and we end up going to school. We're just a slug on a chair, but our brain is whirring because our brain is always whirring. We might have like a more cerebral task that we have to complete. So we're like this whirring all the time, but the body isn't helping you digest that whirring and that energy. So for me, as somebody, I have all the time where people are like, oh, how do you know it feels to have like mental health problems and stuff? I have battled with my mental health for almost my whole life. And I feel like I'm coming out the other side of it now because I'm finally putting these like things in place where I just know who I am. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I've got tools that can help me. I'm learning about boundaries and not people pleasing and realizing that I'm allowed to look after myself and I don't just have to like pander to everyone else all the time. I know mental health problems. Believe you me, I know mental health problems. And just because I put myself on a screen and do this for a job, it doesn't mean that I'm like amazingly confident and always have been. And the more that I get older, the more I realize that actually the people that appear the most confident on the outside are compensating because they feel like they have so much to prove. They feel like they have to be like the person that keeps the conversation going. It's like a burden almost to be someone like me. And I'm not being like, oh, woe is me, but I wish more people who are quieter and more reserved realize that when you see someone like me, we're not confident. We don't know what's going on. Our insecurity is simply presenting itself as talking loudly. Anyway, I'm completely digressing. But I'm somebody who knows mental health problems. What I know is that the more connected I am in my body, through posture, through yoga, through walking, whatever it might be, initially it's really hard. You go through this like very confrontational period where because you're in your body rather than taking yourself out. So I spent years numbing with alcohol, just distractions, partying, traveling all the time to escape my regular life. I used to have disassociative episodes where it's like a really weird thing, but it's kind of like a panic attack where you like come out of your body and you're like looking down at your body and then you go back into your body. It's mental. My whole life, I had these mechanisms of distracting me from my physical body, various different things that would numb me and take me away from my physical body. When I started doing these mindful movement practices, it's really hard to start with because you are being asked to deal with stuff, deal with emotions, deal with trauma, and deal with reality that you have maybe been pushing away from you for X amount of years or decades. So initially, this reconnection to your physical body is really effing hard. But once you've got over that hurdle, you become a human again. So once you get over that hurdle and you're reconnected to feeling things physically, sitting with your emotions, sitting with emotional discomfort, processing things rather than hiding and numbing them, when you have that union of body and brain, your life will change. It's really hard to describe, but hopefully I'm giving you like a little bit of a taste of it. Your life will change, I promise you. And so, again, to circle back around to my original point, on the surface, what I do is I help people get rid of pain by teaching them to move differently. But on a deeper level, the most meaningful thing about the work that I do is I help people realize who they are again beneath all of the layers and layers and layers of conditioning that society has put upon them over the years. Movement and a better connection with who you are and who your physical body is brings out the true, wonderful, loving, confident person that's within. But until you confront that by getting yourself back in your body, you'll never experience that side of you. I've definitely rattled on a little bit there, and there was possibly no purpose, but I appreciate my way and who I am is not for everybody. So part of my whole journey has been like learning, be more yourself, because what I'll do is I'll turn off the people that are never going to want to work with me and who are never going to get success with working with me. But what I will hopefully do is turn on the right type of person who hears what I have to say and thinks, I resonate with that. I think Ellie is the person to help me.